Alrighty. Hi guys, it's Trey with We Don't Know Why. Wish I could live stream this, but I cannot because my channel does not meet the guidelines or whatever on YouTube yet. So we're gonna record this and put it on right after it's done. We're here. It's Ron DeSantis on Twitter with Elon Musk, and let's just listen and see what we think. Huh?
Are operating in lockstep. It makes the most important amendment, the one that was most urgently added to the Constitution, moot if you can't have free and open debate. So Twitter was indeed expensive, but free speech is priceless. Awesome. Thank you. So, Governor, I'm going to ask some questions while we get some other kind of speakers in the queue to ask questions. I think maybe some people knew this announcement was coming because there's been no shortage of hit pieces on you in the press over the last week or two. I want to ask you about some of these accusations that are being leveled at you. Last week, the NAACP issued a travel advisory against your state, claiming that Florida is not a safe place for minorities to visit. What do you say to those who've been advised that somehow they aren't welcome in your state? Claiming that Florida is unsafe is a total farce. I mean, are you kidding me? You look at cities around this country, they are awash in crime.
Obviously, right. You look at California versus Florida, there's a very clear difference there. It clearly was just a BS hit piece.
Florida does not have a single one amongst the top 25. And if you look at cities like Baltimore and Chicago, you got kids more likely to get shot than to receive a first-class education. Yet I don't see the NAACP batting an eye about all the outrage and the carnage that's happening in those areas. So this is a political stunt. These left-wing groups have been doing it for many, many years. And at the end of the day, what they're doing is colluding with legacy media to try to manufacture a narrative. Now, the good news is fewer and fewer Americans are gullible enough to believe this dribble. And platforms like Twitter are there where people can debunk these lies in real time. And I would just say, as an American citizen, if you are uncritically accepting narratives spun by legacy media and left-wing groups, you're failing at your job of being a conscientious citizen. And I think people just see right through it. And oh, by the way, have any of these travel advisories, because they've been doing this for a while, all these left-wing groups, have any of them worked? Well, we're the number one state for net in-migration.
Yeah, they're getting flooded. There's so many people moving from New York and California and shit.
In the history of the state of Florida. And our view is we want everybody to succeed regardless of their skin color. We don't divvy up people by race. At the same time, it is worth pointing out that we have in Florida more black-owned businesses than any state in the nation. And we've also had more African Americans lead state agencies under my administration than at any time in Florida history. But with us, you know they're there because
I'm covering the other half of the screen, so I look at the camera and not
identity politics. And if you want to look at education, the black students in Florida perform much higher than black students in most other states. We rank number 3 in 4th grade reading and number 2 in 4th grade math amongst our black student population. And oh, by the way, the head of the NAACP lives in Florida, and a lot of their board members have put out on social media during my governorship Florida vacations where they seem to be having an awful good time.
Yeah, because you can actually go to Florida, right, and vacation. That's something to note, right? Like, this is the same people that would tell you that, Florida's not safe or whatever, their states are better. I mean, they're also the people that are going to Florida for vacation and whatnot, because again, there's some clear differences there. I missed the first part of this, unfortunately, but it was just DeSantis truly announcing his bid for 2024. I recommend, if you can, try to go back and find that somewhere. I thought it was some really good stuff. It'll be interesting to see how he keeps answering these questions. So far, I don't think there's anything that's been untrue. It's pretty obvious. I have people in my family that live in Florida, and I've been to Florida many times, and I've also been in California, and I know people who have lived in California. So there's just some clear differences there, and I don't think anything he said so far has been untrue.
You have to be, but in their little bubble, it sounds like they're making some type of profound point. And so part of, I think, what Twitter is standing for is people should be exposed to different viewpoints. And I think the elites in our society have tried to cluster themselves to where their assumptions are never challenged. And that's not a good way, I think, to live. It's also not a good way to be a critical thinker, because no one's ever going to question obviously wrong assumptions, because everybody around you shares them.
Absolutely. And I think they become totally hysterical because they don't like the idea that their control over the media is being, disintermediated. Yeah. Because now, candidates for president can just speak directly to people through platforms like Twitter. Yeah, I mean, the amazing thing about Twitter and things like Spaces are that, although I happen to be hosting it, I had to switch over to David hosting it because my account was actually just too much interest. But my account was breaking the system. But there's really never been a mechanism before where someone could address the nation, or anyone who wanted to listen to them could, from anywhere in the world, United States or anywhere. So I think this is a really profound change. And it's also it's not just whether the media reports something, an article is true or not. Even more powerful is deciding what the narrative is. And so, it's just like, if there's only so much you can actually fit in a newspaper or a magazine. And there's only one thing you really
Yeah, I mean, this Elon Musk, he's getting at it where, this is really kind of a unique experience. There's, almost 300,000 people watching this on Twitter right now through Twitter, and, it's live, right? Unadulterated. I mean, there's no bullshit, right? It really is just their words for all of us to listen to. Even though tomorrow, of course, the people who didn't listen will get the headlines and the twist and the spin from whatever media. People getting to watch this now are watching what these guys think and what they're, where they're really at live.
People to decide the narrative, and for the people to decide which way a debate will go, not sort of 5 editors-in-chiefs of few newspapers, basically. Yeah, and I think one of the really crazy things that happened during COVID is that social networks really started censoring dissenting viewpoints on COVID, medical viewpoints that ended up being totally correct in lockstep with what the mainstream media was doing. So basically, big tech platforms were undermining their main reason for existing, which is giving people a choice. And actually, there's somebody who I think knows more about that than any of us, which is Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who's a professor of medicine at Stanford. I want to pull him in here. Jay, go ahead and unmute yourself if you can. It'd be great to hear from you. I know that during COVID, you worked with Governor DeSantis. It'd be great just to hear a little bit about your interactions and if you have a question for the governor.
This is the real win here, because this is what put DeSantis on the map, really, was the COVID response, right?
With Governor DeSantis, and I was really impressed by his decision-making in the face of an absolute firestorm of criticism. But Governor, you did the right thing when you opened the schools. And my kids in California for a year and a half didn't see the inside of a classroom, whereas Florida kids were in school. You can see it in the results, and the learning loss numbers are so much better in Florida. I'm really curious, Governor, as you're running for president, what are your thoughts about reforming, the public health authority in the United States and the federal government, the CDC, the FDA, the NIH? How do you see the reforms we need so that the mistakes of the lockdowns that happened during the pandemic don't happen again when there's another pandemic?
Big questions. COVID was a big deal.
We need an honest reckoning about what happened during COVID. And the only honest reckoning is that all of those agencies, all of the elites, the public health establishment, they failed. They instituted bad policies. Obviously, it's a novel virus, but I think what happened was when the data was becoming more and more apparent that the path they were on was wrong, they doubled down.
They did double down.
And wanted to do it even more. And I really believe had Florida not just kind of stood in the way, I think this country would have had rolling lockdowns for probably a 2-year period.
Very possible.
And so their impulses were authoritarian. They were not following the data. And I think the U.S. government needs to acknowledge the failures. And I think all of those agencies need to be cleaned out. What I saw just dealing with them was I saw a interest in the narrative and in politics over evidence-based reasoning and evidence-based medicine. And so I don't have confidence that those agencies are up to the task. And I think you need major overhaul of the whole enchilada with respect to public health in this country.
Enchilada. Yeah, and a really clean house.
Can I follow up with that? I mean, I think the other thing that I saw during the pandemic, Governor, and you was subject to it just as much as I was when we were talking about COVID. YouTube censored a video of us speaking about in a roundtable that you hosted on COVID policy. There's so much of the federal government infrastructure went into suppressing honest scientific discussion during the pandemic. So it's not just public health agencies, but other agencies inside the federal government that worked to suppress the speech of Americans.
Yeah, I mean, they're not wrong, right? I think that's the big thing. And I think his response to these questions is really showing a lot. There's a lot of people that are really questioning where DeSantis is at right now. Some people are calling him just another, political hack, real establishment guy and all that stuff. And to be honest, I just haven't seen that in his response as a governor, the things he's been pressing for, especially with the COVID stuff as well. And I think his answers to these are proving that as well, that he's really not as much of an establishment guy as people say. And some of these smear campaigns are painting him to be. Yeah, and I think the doctor there is asking, is stating a really good point, right, where the U.S. government, in collaboration with all the big tech and all the legacy media, we're truly shutting you down, right? We're all in COVID. We all remember that. It was just a couple of years ago, and it really just ended like earlier this year, right? The whole COVID emergency thing. And we were all there for that, and we saw how that was handled. And we also know how DeSantis handled it in Florida, and how they got their schools back on track faster and stuff like that. And I think even that you can see the effects across the board in a more positive way. And some of the blue states, or even some of the more purple states, had more intense lockdowns and stuff like that, that we can still see them recovering from those years, right? Whereas Florida really was back on track pretty quick.
Any of the health agencies, it's unconstitutional for them to be delegating speech restriction to a private company. You can't do indirectly what the Constitution would clearly forbid you to do directly.
Let me pull in. We have Congressman Thomas Massey. If you're there, go ahead and unmute yourself. I mean, what we're talking about here is, I think, really unconstitutional actions by federal agencies. Congressman Massey, I know that you've been involved in this problem of government agencies being weaponized and used against the American people in an inappropriate way. Do you have a comment on this? And do you have a question for Governor DeSantis?
Well, first of all, let me say a big thank you to Elon Musk for buying Twitter and exposing all of this. On our weaponization committee, we wouldn't know so much of it if he hadn't done this, almost as a public service to the First Amendment. It's a disturbing trend. Government, as the governor said, the government is colluding with big corporations. We found out this week from an FBI whistleblower that Bank of America voluntarily gave names of and information on anybody who bought a hot dog in Washington, D.C. from January 5th to January 7th, and then overlaid that with gun purchases that they had on record anywhere in the country for any period of time. And just, they said they voluntarily gave that to the FBI. So that's disturbing to me. By the way, I've never met Elon Musk, but I'm one of your biggest fans. I'm the first congressman to have a Tesla. I'm on Starlink. And I would have bought a Powerwall, but I'm off the grid, and you wouldn't sell me one, so I had to make one with a wrecked Model S. And
this is so cool. I'm not gonna lie, this is super rad. Just to hear all these voices live, and it's not through, some mainstream media bullshit. Like these guys probably sitting in an office somewhere, like just talking, and I think that's super rad.
Thanks for outing me, Governor DeSantis. But no, so Governor DeSantis, my question to you is, you served here in Congress for 6 years with me, and why is it that Congress is so feckless at reining in these government agencies, and what do you think we need to do? And if you were president, what would you urge Congress, or what bills would you like to see and sign to rein in this, sort of overreach of government bureaucracy?
Well, first, I think there's a lot that the executive branch can do, and all I will say when it comes to these agencies, we'll go into this a little bit more as the campaign goes on. But buckle up when I get in there, because the status quo is not acceptable, and we are going to make sure that we reconstitutionalize this government. And these agencies are totally out of control. There's no accountability, and we are going to bring that in a very big way. Now, part of the reason it's gotten so bad, power's been consolidated and effectively a fourth branch of government, because Congress hasn't used its two main powers that it has.
Now that's kind of an interesting question and response, right? One of Trump's primary, campaign promises then was draining the swamp, right? Like that was the whole shtick, was draining the swamp. And some people would argue that he really failed to do that in any meaningful way, especially with the way that the last year went with COVID and all that stuff. So DeSantis is saying, if I get in there, I mean, he's said, buckle up, right? Like, get ready, because you talk about draining the swamp. He's like, I'm really going to do it, right? So I think that's something that I would like to see happen. And trust me, I voted for Trump, putting that out there. I like what he did. But if there was one major promise that he came up short on, it was that one. So I would like to see someone go in there and finish what he started.
Congress will basically give an invitation for the bureaucracy to make really important substantive decisions. And so Congress may never vote on something, and the bureaucracy will cite a law from 20 years ago and do things that are going to transform our society or our country. That is not the way the founding fathers drew up the Constitution. So would you sign the REINS Act? We passed it out at Judiciary today.
Oh, yeah, no, of course. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. That would, I think, be a great check for that. I also think that we're going to have a good chance to see some of this Chevron deference really curtailed, or maybe even eliminated based on the U.S. Supreme Court's upcoming jurisprudence. And I think that's another reason why the bureaucracy has become so powerful, because courts have basically been told they can pretty much do what they want, and courts are supposed to just defer. I don't think that that's actually correct. I think the courts, they have to make a judgment about what does the law actually say, and you can't just defer to quote-unquote experts in the bureaucracy.
Thank you.
All right, shifting gears, Governor, I want to ask you another topic that's been in the news a lot is Disney. They blamed you for canceling plans for $1 billion investment in Florida. Said they were canceling 2,000 jobs.
That's been going on.
I saw other reports that suggested Disney was going to make the cuts anyway, and due to a larger, budget cutting initiative. Regardless of why they did it, why do you feel your fight with Disney remains important? Considering you already beat them on the parental rights bill that they opposed, and what would you say to some of your opponents in this race who argue that the fight has dragged on too long?
So first of all, Florida stands for the protection of children. We believe jamming gender ideology in elementary school is wrong. Disney obviously supported injecting gender ideology in elementary school. They did oppose our parents' rights legislation. And the fact is, when they opposed it, that was a big deal, because for 50 years, anytime Disney wanted something in Florida politics, they pretty much got it. But not this time. I signed the bill. We did, as you say, win on the issue. But what happened was Disney's posturing, some of the other statements that their executives were making, kind of the corporate culture, had really been outed as trying to inject matters of sex into the programming for the youth. And I think a lot of parents, including me, look at that and say that's not appropriate. I mean, we want our kids to be able to just be kids, and that's kind of our mantra. So you had this setup that Disney engineered many decades ago, where they actually had their own government that they controlled with no accountability. They were exempt from the laws that all their competitors had to follow, massive tax breaks, and they even racked up municipal debt. And Florida basically put them on a pedestal many decades ago and joined the state with this one company at the hip. We just didn't feel that we were comfortable maintaining that relationship. And so we ended their self-governing status. So Disney has to live under the same laws as everybody.
Everyone else.
They got to pay the same taxes as everybody, and obviously they'll be responsible for those debts. So the reason why there's a quote fight is just because they filed a lawsuit against the state of Florida, trying to get their special privileges reinstituted.
See, now that response right there to me doesn't sound like an establishment guy, and I know words don't necessarily mean a lot when coming from a politician, but it's not just words in this sense, it's action as well. He's actually taken action against Disney, and I think a lot of people are growing tired with the Disney fight and the gender fight, and I get that. We can't all Matt Walsh it, where we're in all the time on that stuff, and I get tired of it too, but as an issue, it truly is still a major one, right? So I think his response there of, what he really did, we took Disney down a step, and of course Disney was unhappy with that, and that's why he continues this fight, and he's just not going to let it go that way, right? So it sounds like to me he's not going to go for cronyism, some big business crap to be, in part with his state. That's not what he ran on. That's not what he's going to do, and I don't think that's what he'll do when he becomes president of the United States, which I hope or when he runs. I don't think any of those things will backtrack, as people seem to be hinting that, this is all just an act and he's a shill. I don't see that. I don't see any evidence for that, and I think that was a fantastic answer from DeSantis.
When the state control board took over this district, the firefighters came to the board and they said, hey, we weren't getting survivor benefits for some of these widows. And so the state control board actually paid out some of the benefits that they were getting stiffed on. There were a lot of people in Central Florida who were really thankful that there was some accountability being brought to bear because, it's human nature. If there's no accountability over any individual or entity, of course, they're going to behave differently than if you have normal accountability. But the media was always very hostile to that. But just because I happen to be involved in bringing it back to reality and making sure that they were under the same laws, well, then all of a sudden they're running to Disney's defense. I mean, are you kidding me? And oh, by the way, on this project, they had announced this many years ago. They had not done anything for it, but that is actually not in Reedy Creek. So that was in a different part of Orlando. And so none of the issues that are involved in their suit would have made a difference there. Obviously, as a publicly traded corporation, they have a fiduciary duty to do what's best for their shareholders. So I'm assuming if they were in better financial shape and they saw the project as lucrative, they would have gone forward with it. But I think clearly they've had some problems with their stock price and a lot of other issues. And I'd also just finally point out,
DeSantis
nobody probably has made Disney more money than me because they were open during COVID and they were closed in California.
Big facts.
Many, many months where literally I had all the theme parks in Florida opened in 2020. People are going, it's safe, they're having fun. And the California parks were closed. I think they were closed for over a year out in California. So we were, I think,
Again,
a much better place to be
COVID
doing business, certainly since I've been governor.
Great. Let me shift gears here to the topic of education. I want to pull Chris Rufo
Here we go.
Conversation. I both work with you on some
this is
initiatives.
one that a lot of people are really wishy-washy on. There's a lot of false headlines out there, and even a good friend of mine was talking to me the other day and said he would never vote for DeSantis because of the education stuff, that he believes that some of that stuff is being just censored in general, like you've heard from some of the false headlines. This will be good. American history.
Gay people don't exist. Many people, I think, in this room, we're now up to over 271,000 people. So this is, I think, totally unprecedented in terms of the numbers of people we have participating. By the way, I think Twitter's working much better now. I think it crashed because when you multiply 500,000 people in a room by an account with over 100 million followers, which is Elon's account, I think that created this scalability level that was unprecedented. But with my meager followership, it seems to be working much better.
It's we have some scaling issues specifically related to my account. At one point in January, if I tweeted above a certain size, it would crash the service. And then anyone else who was tweeting at the same time would lose their tweet as well.
Elon Musk. I'm just that good. Sorry.
We're breaking new ground here.
We're scaling issues.
Yes, you're breaking new ground when there are bugs and scaling issues. But in any event, back to the question I was asking you, Governor DeSantis, about education. The media has been, saying you're trying to ban books, you refuse to teach kids about slavery, you want to say that gay people don't exist. What is the truth of the matter for people who maybe I've never heard from you before. And then I want to pull Chris Russo in on this as well.
Yeah, so the whole book ban thing is a hoax. There's not been a single book banned in the state of Florida. You can go buy or use whatever book you want. What we have done is empowered parents with the ability to review the curriculum, to know what books are being used in school, and then to ensure that those books match state standards and are age and developmentally appropriate. So, for example, parents have flagged books in schools that, for example, teach middle school kids how to use sex apps, that provide graphic depictions of sex acts and sex toys for people as young as 5th grade. And so clearly that is not appropriate to be in a middle school classroom. And so parents object and the schools take them out. I did a press conference that we called Exposing the Book Ban Hoax. And before I had the parents come up, before I spoke, I just played the video that had the images of the books that the parents had objected being in their kids' classroom. And the local news had to cut the feed because they said it was too graphic.
Yeah, pornography.
If it's too graphic for the 6 o'clock news, how is it okay
for your middle schooler,
for a 6th grader or a 5th grader? And so nothing's being banned. They're basically ensuring that there's only appropriate material choices
it doesn't sound
that are consistent with state standards. And on the racial history, we eliminated critical race theory from our K through 12 schools. That was the right thing to do. In other words, we're not going to take a kid who comes in at 6 years old and say they're an oppressor or
because they're white. That's bullshit. That's
100%. That's wrong. We're also not going to be teaching people to hate their country. But what we are going to do is teach the accurate history. So in the same bill that banned critical race theory, we required teaching thoroughly about racial discrimination that occurred in American history.
That's
and
a piece
Florida's
of history.
Standards
Perfectly
require
fair.
all of those subjects from slavery, Reconstruction, segregation, all of that to be taught, and will continue to do that. So I think what you see is the left and the media colluding on this. They don't want to actually defend what it is that we are actually legislating or regulating. They
got to make you the boogeyman.
That somehow you don't want kids to learn that slavery existed in America, which is
of course bullshit. Yeah, everyone's taught that. Everyone is taught that.
The offending material, and the question is why are there people intent on trying to get this stuff into the classroom? And I think it's part of a political agenda. So our mantra in Florida is the purpose of the schools is education, not indoctrination. Yes, I think it's very inappropriate to have sexually explicit material in a 5th grade library, 100%.
Obviously.
But it's also the case that if you're focusing on that type of instruction, there's an opportunity cost involved. Why shouldn't we be doing more on science or reading or math? And so I think we're getting it right. And I think almost invariably, and Chris Rufo's had to deal with this too, when they're trying to craft these narratives, you just peel back the onion, you realize that this is something they're manufacturing.
Yeah, they're full of shit. It's pretty easy to tell.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I was actually under the impression that there were some books banned, so this is news to me.
And there was the one this week was that Miami-Dade County took a book that was about like poems from I think like Biden's inauguration, and they moved it from elementary school library to middle school library. The media tried to act like somehow this is being banned. And you actually had Miami-Dade County Public Schools spokesperson have to come out and say there's nothing that's been banned or removed. It was basically just determined that this particular book was better suited for middle school.
Yeah, what's an elementary school kid going to do with poems of that caliber, right? Like nothing.
That is offending something.
Are you going to put Shakespeare in your first grader's classroom? No,
but I think obviously. The reason that they're doing that is because there is actually a movement to ban books from like Amazon and some of these others. California, some municipalities have banned things like To Kill a Mockingbird. What they're trying to do
real
is
books,
see if some
right?
of these
that
books
mean
pass
that you
the
can actually get something out of.
And if they don't,
that
they are
show
going
the good and the bad.
Some of those books. Whereas in
They
Florida,
just want the
you
bad.
can buy whatever book you want. But that's a different question than what would be appropriate for a 3rd grader or what would be appropriate for a 6th grader. Government, by definition, has to make those choices about what type of curriculum we want to put in front of our students. And the parents obviously have an important voice in that.
And they've done that. They've incorporated parents.
In fact, a friend of mine, Tim Urban, who has a blog called Wait But Why, and is really one of the most reasonable people on earth and one of the most reasonable people I've ever met, had a lot of trouble actually publishing his book, simply because it debated sort of sacred cows of woke ideology. But incredibly reasonable book. So, but that is the kind of de facto book banning and de facto book suppression that I see quite a lot of.
Yeah.
Is that publishers are unwilling to take risks.
There's that.
Let me shift gears here for a second because I know we're running out of time. We're supposed to end, I think, around 4, but 4 Pacific. But thank you for giving us a little bit extra time here, Governor. Shifting gears to a major federal issue, immigration. We see I've seen these videos on social media and on TV of what looks like just insanity at the border. What is your take on what's going on there, and how would you address that as president?
Big question. This is the big deal coming up in the next election.
You need to shut the border down. You should not be entertaining these asylum claims for people crossing illegally. Now, asylum is a legitimate thing, but these are people that, when they come, I mean, they're being persecuted. These people coming overwhelmingly are economic migrants that are coming across many other different countries. They should be applying for asylum there if they were, truly qualifying for that, but they're not. They know that if they just show up at the southern border, and these are people all over the world that are coming illegally, they know that they will get a sheet of paper saying, okay, come back for a court date in 3 years. And
yeah, so they're let off into the interior, and there you go.
System. So
3 years later, no one's going to show up.
We will move on day 1 by declaring a national emergency. We will construct a border wall. We will make sure we have remain in Mexico and that we're not entertaining those claims in that way. And we really need to hold the Mexican drug cartels accountable because they're facilitating
a lot of
this migration.
And with them comes the fentanyl and everything.
They treat a lot of these people very horribly as they're trafficking.
Yeah, they're not. It's not a humanitarian effort down there, for sure, from the cartel side of things.
Removing massive amounts of fentanyl into this country, and that's killing tens of thousands of
Lots
Americans
of people.
Every year
Lots
now.
Of young
and
kids.
What they're doing is they lace the other types of drugs. With the fentanyl.
Yep.
So you may have like a teenage kid doing something they probably shouldn't do, but in prior generations would not have been fatal. And now if it's laced with fentanyl, these kids can overdose and die. And so mothers are losing kids as a result of this fentanyl epidemic. And I just don't think you could allow these criminal organizations to continue poisoning our population. So it'll be a day 1 issue. We will bring overwhelming amount of resources to deal with it, and we are going to stop this insanity once and for all.
There's I think, follow-up question on immigration from Steve Dace, who is a national radio personality and I think an important commentator in the great state of Iowa. Steve, do you have a comment or question? I think you just need to unmute. If Steve can unmute, then we'll go ahead and ask him for a question. If not, we'll keep rolling here. All right, 3, 2, going. All right, sorry, Steve.
I'm there, guys.
Oh, there he is. All right.
Yeah, my bad. First of all, I want to echo what Congressman Massey said to Elon. Elon, if I put down money on January 1st, 2022, that Twitter was going to be the last bastion of free speech on earth, brother.
Yeah, no one would have.
You are on that bet right now.
Yeah,
I mean, it's incredible.
Honestly,
what you have done here, and the restoration of a lot of accounts of people that were truth tellers and were ran from here for telling the truth. I saw a meme the other day that said, "Of course, you have scientific consensus when you censor all the scientists who disagree." So I wanted to just say, first and foremost, on behalf of a lot of grateful people around the country and the world, really, thank you very much for that and the investment you made in that cause. Thank you. A question is a follow-up to you, Governor, on this very issue with immigration. We have heard a lot over the years, lock her up, drain the swamp, going to build a beautiful wall, Mexico is going to pay for it, and crowds cheered, and everybody loved it, and brands got built, and nothing got done.
Trump.
What is the bottom line assurance that you can make
that
to the people that are listening
right
now, all over the world and all over the country, that you can actually do the agenda that you just articulated when others tweeted about it and talked about it, but then couldn't actually follow through?
knock on
It's a
stuff.
great question because I share that frustration. I think even my worst critics in Florida will acknowledge when I tell people I'm going to do something, I don't make promises or say I'm going to do something lightly. I thought
No,
it
he's
through.
fucking done it. Pretty
And I
much
know
everything
I
that
am gonna follow
I've heard
through
publicly
on what I
from
tell
him, and I
people
don't
I'm
live
gonna
in
do.
Florida,
So this
but
is one
everything that I've
that would
heard
be
from him,
followed through. Number
he's
two,
followed through.
I understand the different leverage points that you would have under Article 2 of the Constitution. I studied that a lot at becoming governor about Florida's Constitution, doing the same thing for the federal Constitution. And you've got to know how to use your leverage to advance what you're trying to accomplish. So, for example, there's leverage that we can use vis-a-vis Mexico that I think presidents have not been willing to do. I think sometimes for political purposes. But I'll look at, okay, what are all the variety of options we can do? Which buttons can I push? And I will do that to be able to bring this issue to a conclusion once and for all. We had Hurricane Ian come through Southwest Florida, Category 4 plus storm, September of 2022, and it did a lot of damage. But one of the things it did, it knocked out a bridge going from the mainland to Pine Island, and it severed the Sanibel Causeway in 3 different locations. And the locals were being told it's going to take 6 months to get that stuff repaired. And so they came to me, even though these were not state-owned bridges, and they said, can you help us? And I said, okay, I'll do it. So I got my guys together. I said, listen, no bureaucracy, no red tape,
no bullshit.
No excuses. Get it done.
Big
we
facts.
need to open these bridges back.
And I fucking did.
Pine Island
It was
Bridge
quick.
reopened
It was
3
very
days
impressive.
later. Sanibel
Super
Causeway
impressive.
opened 2 weeks after that. Way ahead of schedule.
It was impressive.
Take no for an answer.
My family, again, I got family that lives in Florida during that hurricane, and the rate they moved to get shit back together was crazy.
Get in and then forget about it. As an American citizen, if I wasn't running, this would be an issue that bothers me. I've put a lot of my capital as Florida governor involved in combating illegal immigration. We banned sanctuary cities my first year. We just did a strong anti-illegal immigration bill in Florida that's working. I put marine assets in the Florida Keys to help the Coast Guard repel boats from places like Haiti. I have people at the southern border right now helping Texas, and we've even been able to relocate illegal aliens to places like Martha's Vineyard. So I don't think any governor has probably gone out of his way to do more to try to make an impact on this issue. And I'm not going to take no for an answer. And I think our voters are sick of the empty promises.
Empty promises. That's what I had said. During the swamp thing.
Yeah, I saw the cover of Time Magazine this week, and I think they were trying to do a negative story because you were sort of scowling in this portrait they made of you. And in the article, they call you, they compared you to the Terminator. And I think they meant insult, but I thought it was kind of cool. I thought it was a good thing because I think we need a cool-headed, ruthless assassin to go in and they take on the
solve the fucking problems. Like really get it done. No bullshit.
And take on problems like the ones at the border. So, again, I thought it made you sound great, even though that may not have been their intention.
Well, look, at the end of the day, this whole business that we're in is about producing results. I don't care about fanfare. I'm the governor, I'm known, right? And I go around the state and everything. And people are very nice. And so, I appreciate the well wishes, but I don't need any of the fanfare. I don't need any adulation. I just know I'm in a position where I have a chance to make a difference, and I'm either doing it or I'm not. And I remember sitting at the desk in the state capitol my first day as governor 4.5 years ago. I looked around the room, and I thought to myself, I don't know what SOB is going to succeed me in this chair, but they are not going to have anything to do because I'm getting all the meat off the bone. I am going to make sure that I'm leaning into issues and making an impact. And we have done that in the state of Florida.
Yeah, the receipts are pretty clear on that one, guys.
To 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Governor, I'd love to jump in and follow up on that. This is Chris Rufo, and I've had the honor of working with you in the past few years on critical race theory, gender ideology, and the DEI bureaucracy. And what I've seen up close and personal is that while many conservative politicians, going back decades, have made headlines and got on television playing culture war, they never actually get anything done. And what you've done over the last few years is really astonishing. You've eliminated CRT from all Florida's public institutions. You've stopped gender ideology dead in its tracks in K through 12. And just last week, you eliminated the DEI bureaucracy in all of Florida's public universities. They'll be shut down completely. And I think what you've done is established a blueprint for fighting back against the left's long march of the institutions and making sure that those institutions reflect the value of Florida voters, not left-wing activists and the partisan press. So my question for you is, D.C. is another animal. It's quite different, the scale of the federal
Going
government.
federal from state
How
is
are you
quite
going
the
to deliver
change.
results, and what is your culture war strategy facing down the swamp in D.C.?
Well, some of it is similar in this respect. When we're taking on things like DEI, you get blowback from legacy media and the far left. But that's an example of an issue where they are out of step with the vast majority of Americans. It's not just Republicans.
Right, like it's not hard to do because most of us, me and you, are opposing it anyways.
You want to know when they apply to college, they're going to be judged based on their merit.
Not
and they're
on their
not going to
race.
be roadkill in some type of woke Olympics where they didn't fit some category and so they're denied opportunity. They want to make sure that achievement matters. And so we get a lot of quiet support for a lot of those things. And so I think what I do, just because, look, I'm a blue-collar kid. I grew up in the Tampa Bay area, working minimum wage to get through school. My grandfather worked in the steel mill in Western Pennsylvania. I just know instinctively kind of what, like, normal people think about all this stuff. And I have a good sense of when the legacy media and the left are outside of where the average American is, because people want you to be using common sense. And things like DEI, I mean, when I was growing up, I think things were better because people were actually told you should try to get along. Now, they're told you need to segregate.
Yeah,
and it's just
I mean, that's what it is.
They're trying to do all this stuff. So by eliminating that...
No, and it really is that crazy, right? And it's harder for older people to understand where we're at right now. Because I'm only 21 years of age, right? So I'm 21, I'll be 22 soon. And I've seen that not only in my life, just from when I was, in, say, first to second grade, and, so on, and how things have changed. And I know what my siblings see every day who are, 4 years plus younger than me, right? That it is no longer, let's get along, that everyone's the same. It's that certain people are horrible and other people are better, and it's all based on skin color. We've definitely taken some back steps with that stuff. So I think it's a completely honest and fair point.
Colorblind, merit-based accreditation scheme. And so as president, controlling that agency, you can then approve other types of accreditation. So I think part of it is just knowing where are all the pressure points, how does it get to the point that we then see and that somebody like you will run a report on, like when you see some of the outrageous stuff that's generated in some sociology department at a university. That didn't just happen out of thin air. There's a reason why we got to that point. And I think that there are some tools with the federal government where you can push back and try to get these institutions moored in a more foundational direction about, hey, we're pursuing truth here, and we're not here to try to impose one niche ideology on the entire student body.
Great. Shifting gears, Dana Lash, you have a question or comment for the governor?
I do, and thank you both so much for your time, for joining us in a very new way. I really appreciate that. I think it's really cool. And for your support of free speech, too. And Elon, I have to say thank you for taking arrows and for unthrottling the accounts of all of us who got in trouble for sharing a New York Post story about a laptop. And Governor, I wanted to thank you for your leadership and your unwavering support of Second Amendment rights. And you're on my program tomorrow, and I just got to say, you got my vote in the primary, so I appreciate it very much. You were talking about DEI just a minute ago, and I want to ask you both about this growing threat against natural rights and free enterprise. It's this threat of debanking. Now, I know that, Elon, I've read so much about you and what you've gone through. You've called ESG criteria evil incarnate. Governor DeSantis, Florida, saw financially weaponized wokery earlier this year when Wells Fargo Bank dumped both the business and personal accounts of a very prominent and well-respected gun dealer in Florida. They'd been together for 25 years working with Wells Fargo, and they cited new ESG guidelines. Now, similar to the DOJ's previous Operation Choke Point, all these activists for various causes are using this regulatory guidance to debank what they consider to be politically incorrect businesses for the sake of risk management. Now, we say that our rights should not be infringed upon by the government, but what can and should be done about activist-guided financial institutions and these payment processors who are essentially cutting off
Hit the big ones, guys. We've hit drain in the swamp, we've hit immigration, and now we're hitting ESG.
Well, I think it's a fundamental issue that I think not enough conservatives have been wise to. I think more and more are. But at the end of the day, we have certain fundamental rights. And so maybe you're somebody that is really excited about your Second Amendment rights. And obviously, if the government comes in and infringes that, we know you blow the whistle on that. That's a problem. But what if Wall Street banks are colluding so that somebody can't function in that space, whether it's running a store or anything involving that?
We've
Your
seen a
rights
lot
are
of that.
still being infringed upon in that situation. And so I think this whole ESG movement is really trying to do through the financial sector what they could never achieve through the ballot box.
Through the actual law, yeah. And I think that's fair. It's a collusion of big government and big business, as kind of has always been hinted at. And there are certain people that have fought against that.
So in Florida, I just signed anti-ESG legislation, which said things like no ESG criteria in our pension fund. We got a $180 billion state pension fund. No social credit scores for consumers when they're going to bank. In other words, if you apply for a loan, that loan should be judged based on your credit worthiness, not whether you're genuflecting to the appropriate left-wing causes. But one thing we did do is we did provide protection against this debanking with the woke banking. No discrimination based on your religion and other things, which we know is happening. So I think it's a fundamental question, but we will not be a free society if major financial institutions can do through the economy.
If it's a combo of big business and big government, you're never going to be free. Not ever.
Our rights will be restricted, will be the end result, and that's not healthy for a free country.
As a follow-up to that, Governor, Dana mentioned Operation Choke Point, and that is a term that's very familiar to crypto companies in Silicon Valley and fintech companies. Basically, it refers to an effort by the federal government, including the SEC, to basically regulate blockchain and crypto companies out of existence. They really feel like they're being driven out of the country. And I'm not talking about scammy ones or the totally fake ones like FTX, but really high-quality, good companies, including companies that are public, like Coinbase. And these guys are basically begging the government for just a framework. They're just like, tell us how to operate legally, and we'll do it. I guess where do you come down on this? What is your view, I guess, broadly of Bitcoin and people's right to hold Bitcoin and to transact Bitcoin and those coins?
You have every right to do Bitcoin. The only reason these people in Washington don't like it is because they don't control it.
Yeah, they can't regulate it. That was the whole issue with Bitcoin.
They want to have control over
with the cryptos. The government couldn't.
Yeah. A threat to them.
Yeah.
And so
because our dollar means
trying
nothing.
To regulate it out of existence. Look, could Congress enact a statute to ban things like Bitcoin under the Constitution? They may be able to do. I would oppose that. I think people should be able to do Bitcoin. But Congress has never addressed this in this fashion, and for the bureaucracy to just do it on their own and make it so people can't operate in that space. That's what we mean when we say we've got to return the government to the people's elected representatives who are our voice to be able to make these decisions. And so as president, we'll protect the ability to do things like Bitcoin. I think these are people that are sophisticated. They can make decisions. There's risks involved with it, but let them do that. I just do not have an itch to have to control everything that people may be doing in this space. And I think that the current regime, clearly, they have it out for Bitcoin. And if it continues for another 4 years,
the spending policy is
probably end up
outrageous.
killing it.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that is the strong feeling of people in Silicon Valley who are in this space, and I think we'll be heartened to hear your answer on that. I mean, the weird thing is that, and there is a huge constituency of crypto Twitter, so for people who are maybe part of political Twitter who are wondering why we're talking about this, it really has a big audience for this topic.
Dogecoin too, that's what I've said.
Yeah. Bitcoin and Dogecoin. So shout out to all the Doge fans out there.
I love that.
But the weird thing is that this administration, they seem to want to ban Bitcoin, but they want to create a CBDC, which stands for a central bank digital currency.
Yeah, they want something they can control.
So we were the first state just last month. We actually got the Florida legislature to pass a law that says Florida does not recognize central bank digital currency, because some states were actually adding that to their uniform commercial code.
Good.
The federal government's studying this. We did the opposite and say we didn't. Now, the reason why we did that is because what the Federal Reserve has said is, we're going to consult with Congress. We'll consult with the executive branch. We don't have a CBDC right now, and ideally we would get authorization for Congress. Well, wait a minute. It's not ideally. You must get authorization from Congress. I don't think Congress would authorize it. So they unilaterally try to do this. We're trying to provide protection for people here in Florida.
I know Venezuela. They want to spend without any,
if I'm president, we are not doing
without any accountability.
Central bank digital currency. I think that would be a huge imposition on people's financial freedoms and financial privacy.
Gosh,
and by the way, what would the logical result of this be? If the central authority has oversight over this, of course they're going to start imposing ESG criteria. Oh, wait a minute. You filled up your gas tank 3 times this week. You can't do any more.
You can't do that. Because that's bad for the environment.
Manipulate this. So I see it as a massive transfer of power from individual consumers to a central authority. And I don't think that that's good for a free society. So I'm a no on central bank digital currency.
Great. Yeah, great. Well, Governor, I want to thank you for the time. We could go for hours here, but I know you only had an hour, and we've gone over that, so I want to be respectful of your time. I know there's so many people who want to ask questions, and
we should do it again. I mean, I think it was fun. I think this is great.
This is great. This is
we'll
awesome.
Make sure that we come back and do it again. This is a great platform. I mean, I would like to see other platforms going in the same direction, but a healthy democratic society needs the robust debate. So I just want to thank everybody for listening in, and I'll just make that pitch again. We want you on the team. We'd love for you to go to rondesantis.com and make a donation so that we can get this done on this nomination and win the election in November of 2024. God bless everybody, and thank you.
Well, thanks, Governor. And we have over 300,000 people in the room. It's really been pretty incredible. And, we started with some technical issues because of the sheer scale and unprecedented.
All right, guys. That is that. So, honestly, I think that was fantastic. I think it was really unique to be able to actually hear all these people live, right? There's no media spin. There's no crap going on here. It was all straightforward and live, and you can't bullshit live stuff, right? So I am not going to bullshit live stuff. This is going directly from being recorded right now, posted to the YouTube channel, or just putting it out there. I don't care about background distractions, stuff like that. There's a little bit of that. I'm sorry for that. Just filming my house because this just kind of came on, and I just had to get it out, film something real quick. So they cover the 3 big things, being draining the swamp, some of the promises that Trump didn't quite make it all the way on, immigration, and the ESG and central bank crap as well. So they covered some of those 3 major topics that if you're in the conservative space and you're listening to stuff like the Daily Wire or Clay Travis Buck Sexton Show or Glenn Beck or even Steven Crowder, right, you hear a lot more of that stuff. And they also touched on a lot of the culture war stuff, some of that gender ideology crap, and the CRT stuff as well, which if you're watching, again, like Matt Walsh and even some Steven Crowder and stuff, you hear a lot more of that as well. So they touched all the big issues that I think a lot of conservative voters are going to be looking for in their, in whoever they're put up to, for nominee and whoever they hope to have in office. I would say one thing for a caveat, okay? There's been a lot of negative information right now about Ron DeSantis. I think it's all kind of suspect, in my honest opinion. I don't think there's been anything that this guy has actually done, that there are any real receipts for, that back up any of these claims that he's some establishment guy or he's backed by George Soros or all this other crap. If someone wants to put some fucking receipts out in a video and show all the people that are pro DeSantis at this point that those things are legitimate, I'd be happy to see it. Otherwise, I believe it's probably just a smear campaign, which we all know who's likely backing that smear campaign, the guy who wants to win. And look, okay, guys, I want to put this out here, okay, because this is going to rub people wrong anyways. Being pro DeSantis at this point somehow rubs half our party wrong. Look, this is not about the political game, guys. We've lost the last two, right? Whether it was from cheating or honest, we just lost because we're crap or whatever. Okay, we've lost the last two elections. We can't afford to lose another one, right? We lose one more time, Biden gets another term, things are going to look very different. We're going to be in a very different world, right? We can't afford that. So this is not some political crap bullshit game, guys. We gotta get together and we gotta just send this home. We gotta send this one home, okay? And that means backing one candidate. And personally, I would say DeSantis has significantly more pros at this point. He's hated less, and you can guarantee after 4 years of DeSantis, we're likely to get another 4 years of DeSantis, right? Whereas if we get 4 more years of Trump, the evidence of what's happened in the past would show that we're going to get 4 years at least of another Democratic candidate, okay? Because they can come up with someone in 4 years. Maybe they don't have one for for the next one, they'll probably end up running Biden again, realistically, because that's their guy. That's all they've got, right? But in another 4 years, they'll have someone else, okay? And the odds are that they have beat Trump down and they've made him look bad, and all the people out there that are more gullible are going to not vote for Trump because he is Trump. That is the problem. It's the name. People are either voting for Trump because he's Trump or not voting for Trump because he's Trump, right? And whether you say that last primary election was stolen or not stolen, whatever you want to say, I'm not going to get into that. We lost, regardless, okay, guys? And there were a lot of people that didn't vote for him because he was just him. Okay, we don't have the same hatred right now with DeSantis, and I think we'd be wise not to fuel that fire any more than it already is. So I say we all get behind DeSantis. We have him for 8 years, and we are set, right? Then we can look after that. That's 8 years from now. We got time to look at that, right? But I don't think Trump going in for 4 years is going to do it, guys. Okay? And that is not saying I hate Trump. That's what I hate, right? This is the big problem. We got this massive divide. Someone, who the fuck knows who it is, has split us right down the middle as a party. And that's not going to work. Okay, guys? We're going to lose every time. Okay? We can't let the last 2 losses dictate what we're doing and how we feel about this now. I know there's been a lot more conservative infighting since especially the midterms, okay? Because everyone's down on their luck. They feel like they're looking for someone to blame, okay? We can't let that happen. We can't have the infighting. We can't have the crap. We got to find the strong candidate and back them. And look, if something comes out about DeSantis that's honest, that, is really something I can't agree with, he won't get my vote. Okay, and if Trump's the only person out there to vote for it, he's got my vote. He had my vote the last 2 times. Okay, he got my vote. All right, guys. So, he got my vote the last time. I couldn't vote the first time, but I wasn't old enough. But he got my vote the last time, and if I was able to vote, he would have had my vote the first time. Okay, so I don't hate Trump. I like what he did. Okay, I'm not talking crap on Trump, and I don't hate people that like Trump, okay? But here's the problem. We can't have people that are like, well, the only people voting for DeSantis are never Trump or idiots. And we can't have people that are like, the only people are voting for Trump are total Trump deranged idiots, right? That just love Trump constantly, and that's it. He's like their God. We can't have any of that, guys. We have to be honest. We have to have a real discussion with each other and back one candidate. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. This will, again, go right from here to YouTube in as quickly as I can in a very live format. So there's, it's not perfect, but it's better than me, doctoring this up and a bunch of crap. This is just the way it was. I'm pro DeSantis. He's got my vote unless something else changes. But anyways, without further ado, and without further ado, that's not what I want. Anyways, without blabbering on, so we could literally talk about this for hours. We're just about an hour of filming. I hope you enjoyed again. If you did, like, subscribe, leave some comments, questions, maybe your reasons for not backing DeSantis. If you guys have got receipts, show me, right? Show me. There you go. You got receipts, you got real articles that have some, solid backing or some real sources that are legitimate. You can email me at wedon'tknow1@gmail.com. I'd be happy to read through them and make another video on it. With all that said, I'm Trey with We Don't Know Why, signing off. I'll see you guys in the next video.